Well, hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Steven here, Northwest Small Batch Brewing. It's obviously a brew talk today. I am either between brew days or I'm in the middle of editing a brew day for you. So we'll get to that when we can get to it. And I'll just spill my beer everywhere while I'm pouring it. No, I didn't spill too bad, just a little. Anyway. Happy holidays, believe it or not. I don't know when this is going to hit, but it is the holiday time for me right now. So, yeast. I want to talk about yeast. Yeah. Some of this you might already know, some of you may not, but I don't think it's totally going to be mind-blowing. But I think you got to know what's going on with the yeast in order to treat it properly during the fermentation. So I'm really talking about the first 24 hours of fermentation, like active fermentation. Now, it can take some time for that to kick off, depending on what kind of yeast you use, if it's dry yeast, whatever, liquid yeast. But once it starts, you're the most of everything that's going on happens very quickly in the first, couple of days, first 24 hours. So first of all, you have a lot of yeast in suspension, right? Floating around. You pitch your yeast, and then there is a period of really, really rapid growth in the first 24 hours. So you pitch your yeast, and you generally will double, triple, quadruple the yeast colony in that 24 hours. So what you're pitching is not the entirety of what you're going to need to ferment. Your yeast is your yeast is living in a brothel, and it is reproducing very quickly. In that first 24 hours, your yeast is absorbing the oxygen that you introduced, which is why, despite a previous video you might have seen me talk about this, that the dry yeast company is saying you don't need to oxygenate your wort. I don't see how it could hurt, and we know that in that first 24 hours the yeast is absorbing that oxygen, and they need that. So it's definitely a good reason to oxygenate. And then also it's absorbing the nutrients that you put in, right? So and that's in the first 24 hours. So it's really important that you have that nutrient right up front. I put in, so I use Fermade K. That's the base I use. Fermade K is the same as Fermade O in the sense that it has the dead yeast cells and different minerals and things. But it also has DAP in it, diammonium phosphate. And what that does is it basically gives you the best of both worlds. You get an immediate benefit to the yeast in that first 24 hours, and then you get a more of a prolonged, boost, like energized boost throughout your fermentation. I also have been putting in a capsule. I did this, I don't know if I did a full video, I can't remember, but I definitely talked about this and showed it. White Labs makes a yeast that specifically has zinc formula in it. And zinc is very important to yeast as well. So I put one of those capsules in as well. And that's it. Just the Fermade K and one of those, zinc, especially made zinc yeast nutrient tablets. And that's it. And it seems to go pretty well. There are some people that will stage that out and put more nutrient in along the way. I don't know if it's that important, but I definitely would recommend putting in more yeast nutrient if you have a stuck fermentation. But I'm not going to go into that because I've done a video on that, but that's a different topic. All right, so what else is happening? You've got rapid yeast growth, and then it starts to taper down in that first 24 hours. CO2 is very similar, right? You have rapid CO2 production in that first 24 hours, and then it slowly starts going down through the rest of the fermentation. Yeah, I mean, there's not much to say more about that. Obviously, that's a byproduct of the yeast, but that's also happening. And again, we're still in this mindset that everything's happening quickly in that first 24 hours of active fermentation. Your gravity. So gravity meaning the density, right? That's the density of sugar, you know, or whatever to liquid. Your gravity actually does not drop much in that first 24 hours. It drops pretty quickly after your what we call high Croissant. So you have that active fermentation going, and when you hit that I mean, it's can't always measure it, but when you hit what you think is that like the most active point, that's called high Croissant. Then it starts coming back down, right? Well, when it starts coming back down, that's when you'll see the rapid changes in your gravity. So don't expect a lot of changes in those numbers until after, say, the first 24 hours. How about your pH? Now, I don't talk about pH much because I don't adjust mine. And that's just because of the way I'm set up. If you're using tap water, well water, whatever your water source is, checking your pH and modifying your pH may be a big, you know, important step. For me, it's not. I'm using spring water from the store to make my beers, and it's pretty neutral. I don't have really an issue with the pH. Now, certain styles of beers, you have to look at the pH as well. I don't generally make those kinds of beers. Like, for example, sours, you absolutely have to have a pH meter and know. But other beers, I mean, some people will say IPAs, hazy IPAs. You have to watch the pH, but I never have. In fact, it may be already out by the time I do this, but I'm going to be doing my hazy IPA again here shortly, and we'll put that up once it's ready. But yeah, pH, right? So pH drops really quickly in the first 24 hours. So, you know, your normal pH is in the range of like 5.3, 5.4, whatever, something like that, when you're, you know, all mashed in, right? But by the time it starts fermenting, that pH starts to drop, and drops pretty quickly in that first 24 hours. What else? Ethanol, right? So ethanol is the good alcohol. It's the one that you want. So, I mean, that's also a byproduct of the yeast, right? Is the alcohol. And the reality is that just like the CO2, or not the CO2, the gravity, there's not a lot of alcohol produced in that first 24 hours. It just doesn't happen, right? It's a very slow increase after that first like rapid 24 hours of fermentation. But initially, there's not going to be a ton of alcohol right off the bat. It's a slow burn on that one. And that's it. So that's what happens with yeast in your beer. It is interesting to think about the fact that most of the stuff that we're looking at happens really early on in your fermentation. So that's about all I had to say. I'll be back next week with another video. And until then, happy brewing.